You are in a presentation. The deck is polished. The strategy sounds solid. The numbers hold together. Everything on the surface checks out. And something in you says, this is a little thin. You go looking for what's off. You can't find it. The surface is too clean. So you do what you've been trained to do your entire career when your intuition conflicts with visible evidence. You audit yourself. You wonder if your standards are too high, if you are resisting change, if something in your own output has slipped and you are projecting. And then you move on to approve the initiative, project, or program. Something is happening in organizations right now that nobody is talking about clearly yet. It is not about AI replacing jobs. It is about what AI in the workplace is doing to the one thing that has never been replaceable: the judgment and knowledge you've built up over decades inside these rooms. And the question I want you to sit with as you watch this video is, what if the instinct you have been overriding is the most accurate instrument in the room? Your pattern recognition was built on specific kind of evidence. You have spent decades learning to read the invisible signatures in how work gets done. Not just what the output says, how it was assembled. Whether the thinking underneath it is load bearing. You built that assessment because it was accurate, and it stayed accurate because the inputs were reliable. The inputs are no longer reliable in the same way. Your read of the room is the same, and the room is different. You are pattern matching against a signal that has been partially replaced with something that mimics the signal without carrying the same information. This is why things feel slightly off in the way you cannot easily name. The surface passes the visual inspection. Your instinct says, wait. And instead of trusting the instinct, you audit yourself because you are a rigorous thinker, because you were trained to trust evidence over instinct, because you have spent years in rooms where surfacing an objection or an intuition based on your years of experience and knowledge you could not yet defend, it ends up costing you something. So you hold it, and then you approve the initiative, program, or project. And sometimes, maybe 3 weeks later or longer, the work falls apart in the room where someone actually presses on it. That is not your standards being too high. That is your instrument being right. Your instinct is not broken. It is doing precisely what it was built to do. It is detecting the absence of the productive struggle. Work that reflects genuine thinking leaves evidence of itself even in a clean final product. There are invisible choices, the things that got cut and why, the trade-offs that got named. The risks of only working in that environment are known. The places where the argument almost went a totally different direction and didn't. You've been reading that absence for years. Work assembled through AI leverage can produce a surface that looks complete without those signatures underneath. It can answer every question on the rubric. What it often cannot do is hold up in the room where your best people start pressing on the assumptions because the depth was never there to hold. Your instinct is flagging the absence of depth before anyone else has words for it. That is not resistance to change. That is not a high standard as a character flaw. That is a finely calibrated instrument reading a signal most people in the room cannot yet name. And here's where it gets consequential, because you have been trained to manage that signal rather than act on it. There is a suppression mechanism that runs in leaders who have navigated high stakes environments long enough. It sounds like this: I have a misgiving about this. I can't prove it yet. Maybe I should remain silent. That mechanism was not irrational when it was built. There were rooms where surfacing an instinct without the data to back it up cost you credibility, where naming what you saw before you could defend it with data got you managed rather than heard. So you learned to audit yourself first, to wait for the evidence, to hold your misgivings until you could prove it. The problem is what that habit does over time. Every time you override a signal that turns out to be accurate, you erode trust in that signal a little more. Not just in yourself, in your own instrument. And eventually you stop hearing it as clearly as you used to. Right now, in an environment where the surface has gotten cleaner and the depth has not, your organization needs someone who can tell the difference between thinking and the appearance of thinking. Someone has to be able to judge what is actually true, not just what's on the deck. That's not a soft skill. That is a precision instrument, and it's yours. The practical shift is this: stop evaluating whether the output looks complete. Start evaluating whether the underlying thinking is accurate and true. Those are different assessments, and only one of them requires the specific judgment you have been building for decades. Here is how you test it. Ask the second order question, the one that requires the person presenting to have actually thought through the problem, not generated a plausible answer to it. Push on an assumption that is downstream of a decision. Ask, what would break this? Ask what got cut and why. You will know within 2 exchanges whether the thinking is real. Name it explicitly in the room when it matters. The question is not whether the output looks complete. The question is whether the thinking is solid and defensible. Say that. Senior leaders in the room will know exactly what you mean. And the deeper thing I want to leave you with goes underneath the AI conversation entirely. The signals that senior leaders learn to distrust are not random. They are consistently the signals that cannot be easily validated in a slide deck. Intuition and pattern recognition that runs ahead of the data. The read you have on a room before anyone has said the thing that confirms it. Those signals were labeled as soft because the environments you were in did not have the language for what they actually are. What they actually are is this: years of compressed pattern recognition operating faster than conscious processing. The instinct that something is thin before you can name why. The little voice saying that a hire was wrong 3 weeks before the data says so. The sense that a deal is off before the numbers tell the story. These are not feelings. They are your most sophisticated leadership instrument, the one that cannot be automated, assembled overnight, or replicated. The inputs got corrupted. The instrument is fine. If this is resonating, if you recognize yourself in what we talked about today, please subscribe. This is what I do every Wednesday. Name the patterns that are sometimes hard to see, much less name when you are still inside them.